Welcome to Hockey Night in New York, where Islanders hockey always reigns supreme. Whether you were raised at the barn in Uniondale or born in the stable at Belmont, Hockey Night in New York is your home for all things Isles. Now, let's drop the puck and get this party started.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is Hockey Night in New York. Welcome to the program, everyone. It is Saturday, September 23rd, 2023. Coming at you live from Floored Media in Rockville Center. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It is time to get things underway here at Hockey Night in New York. Brand new season. Very excited. Little season warm-up show here. We got Ethan Sears in-house from New York Post. And, of course, Stefen Rosner. My name is Sean Cuthbert. Let's get it going. Fellas, how we doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Let's get this going. It's been a long summer.
It certainly has. Ethan, how you doing? Thanks a lot for coming down.
Doing great. Thanks so much for having me, Sean.
Absolutely. So before we get going, I want to thank our wonderful sponsors, starting with the great Blue Line Deli and Bagels. Go satisfy your hunger at 719 West Jericho Turnpike in Huntington and 217 Carlton Avenue in East Islip. And, of course, check out the menu at BlueLineDeli.com. And, of course, a big thanks to Main Street Board Game Cafe. Find your crowd and unplug your game at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village. I want to send a big thanks to them for jumping back on with us this season. Had a great year with them last year. Very excited to have them back. So, fellas, hockey is back. New York Islander hockey is back. Rookie camp got underway. Now we're in training camp. You guys have been there. Stefen, let's start with you. How's it been so far?
I think it's been great. The pace through training camp has been great. I think in rookie camp you saw a lot of guys take those next steps, and we'll get to a lot of those guys later, but I think all in all it's been very competitive, and I think that's exactly what the Islanders want.
No question about it. So, Ethan, obviously you're back for another training camp here. What are you seeing out of this team? Are there any players that maybe you could key on and say, hey, this guy stood out, maybe even in rookie camp?
Yeah, I mean, just from rookie camp, I think you can talk about Isaiah George, you can talk about William DeFore, Matt Maggio. For me, I think those would really be the three who stood out to my eye, and from training camp so far, I think it's pretty early on. But I mean, just seeing Arnaud Durando skating with Matt Barzal and
right.
Bo Horvat, I mean, we kind of assumed that probably won't last, but it is
right.
It's nice to see, and it's a cool little thing so far.
No question about it. And just sticking with rookie camp for a minute, obviously we have a new man at the helm here, new head coach of the Bridgeport Islanders, Rick Kowalski. Anything you guys have seen different with his methods during the rookie camp, kind of how he was leading camp and his approach to the players and whatnot, Stefen, if you want to hit that up?
Well, I think he understands exactly what the point of rookie camp is to really get them going into not crazily systematic stuff, but they know why they're there is to push each other, but also these are young kids trying to develop. And again, Kowalski's been around. He's just being appointed to head coach, so he knows a lot of these guys. I think that helps him a lot because you can see a Dufour. And he talked early on with Dufour had to get better at skating, and now that he's at rookie camp, you can see that. We talked about Simon Holmstrom, who he had in Bridgeport. He told me last year that Holmstrom's issue was hitting the net. See him hit the net more. So I think it's things like that where Kowalski has a leg up. Same thing with Lambert. I know maybe last season wasn't perfect in his first year, but he knew that group, and I think that's a huge advantage.
No question about it. And Ethan, looking at rookie camp, I mean, look, we know that the Islander squad is almost set completely. We got a couple of storylines we'll look at a little bit later when we jump into the full training camp, but any players that might even have a hint of cracking the Islanders lineup, or even at least sticking as an extra, or you think most of those guys are just heading back to either juniors or Bridgeport?
I mean, as far as opening night, the only one who I think really is in the mix for a lineup spot would be Simon Holmstrom. Obviously.
Okay, sure.
And outside of that, to me, you're probably looking at guys who are going to be called up, if and when injuries happen. DeFore is in that category. Maggio is in that category.
Right.
George probably isn't because he has to go back to the OHL. But I think that especially in the forward group, they have some pretty good options there.
That's good to hear. I'm sure Islander fans are happy to hear that. Stefen, you had noted during rookie camp that Johnny Boychuk and Dennis Steidenberg have been there. They're involved in the player development. How have they looked as far as how were the players responding to those guys kind of being there and being involved? Obviously, Johnny Boychuk was a very beloved player, not only in the locker room but by the fan base as well. Dennis Steidenberg, a seasoned veteran who won a cup with Johnny Boychuk. How do you think it went for the players with having those guys there?
So I think a couple of them were in awe. I was talking with Maggio, and he said those are the kind of guys you had on as posters on your wall growing up.
Right,
and I think it's cool for them, but also they said that they could go and ask them anything, but at the same time, Boychuk and Soderberg are going out of their way to go up to them and give pointers. And I think that's the value. Kowalski spoke about that. Lambert spoke about that. It's just, again, they've been through everything. You could ask them everything and they could give you an answer, but the fact that they're being so proactive, I think that's where the benefit is.
No doubt about it. Yeah, it's nice to see them kind of hanging around. Nice to see the organization bringing guys like that back to kind of assist with the development of the players. You can't have enough guys on board to kind of help out with that, so that's good to see. But let's move into the main training camp here. And I guess let's take a look at some of the bigger storylines, right? Like you have very few spots. We look at maybe the wings on the third line with J.G. Pageau. Maybe you have a little bit of intrigue with Sebastian Aho versus Samuel Bolduc as far as the sixth defenseman. So, Ethan, I'll start with you. Just looking at those guys, and I know it's only been a couple of days of training camp so far, but what have you seen out of those players, and what do you think the chances are of maybe Bolduc supplanting Aho in that sixth spot?
Yeah, in my mind, I don't think that I would guess that we're not going to get a sort of permanent resolution from this out of training camp.
Sure.
I look at kind of Noah Dobson played, it's 30-something or 40-something games in kind of his first full year with the team, and I see that as kind of, can Bolduc get around this number of games, whether it's from rotating with Aho, whether it's from other guys getting hurt. You know, I think that to me would represent a pretty worthwhile step in his development, and there's really no need to rush him into a big role, right? I mean, Aho just had pretty easily the best year of his career.
Yeah.
They think he's dependable back there. I don't think that there is really a pressing need to go and replace him.
Sure.
But obviously, Bolduc is somebody who should be in that role kind of in years to come.
To piggyback off that, I mean, last year, remember, Salo beat Aho out for that starting job. Won 6 games.
Remember that guy?
He was, he had some good games, some not so good games, and that was pretty much it for him. So again, like Ethan said, Bolduc could win the job. But after 6 or 7 games, if it's not going well, Aho has certainly proven that he could do it. Again, people don't want to give him credit, but I thought Aho was like their second best defenseman in the playoffs behind Pulak. So I think riding off that, Aho understanding that, hey, I just had a great year, it's definitely good competition, but like Ethan said, you don't want to rush Bolduc. And if he goes in there and gets a chance and struggles, you have Aho. You don't have another major question mark, and that's a huge thing for the organization.
Without a doubt, and let's keep it on the defense for a second. You have 2 guys that you have to figure the bar is being raised for, and that's that middle pairing in Noah Dobson and Alexander Romanov. Romanov coming off the injury, he kind of heroically returned to the playoffs and tried his best to help the team get through that first round unsuccessfully. But how have they looked in camp so far? Has there been any emphasis, especially for a guy like Dobson? We've talked about it on the show a lot, how he's got to pick up his defensive game. How have those guys looked so far?
Now, in terms of Romanov, they're not too physical right now in camp, but the fact that Romanov's on the ice, if there was any chance he wasn't 100%, he would not be out there. So I think that's a positive. He said that he's ready to go. He'll play game 1. I think it was Lou said he would play with 2 broken legs. So like that's just Romanov. But I think in terms of, he looks good. And Dobson too, I think Dobson, and Ethan probably could talk more about this too, is it's pretty much all confidence with him. He has the talent. We've seen it. It's not a player that hasn't shown it. Like for Dobson, I think it's just Barzal being back on the power play is going to help him a lot. But just having the confidence in his game, and I know Ethan did a huge piece on Dobson about skating.
Yeah, no, I talked to him for a good amount of time the other day, and he was saying, as much as we talk about kind of the next steps for him defensively, he said he thinks there's more in his game offensively, and that's where, I mean, he's been right around 50 points the last 2 years, and he says, I think I can take another step there. I
think that's a great point to make because, we all know how much the Islanders power play struggled last year, right?
Yeah.
30th in the league. You can't do too much worse than that. And he managed to get 49 points in the season regardless of that. And he was a big part of that power play that wasn't so successful. And then you wonder, how many points can this guy put up if they actually have a middle-of-the-road power play, or maybe even just a 20th overall power play?
100%. And I mean, we saw, I think they were 12th in the league on the power play in 21-22, and he was a big driver of that. That was kind of where he was able to make a big impact on the game and break out, and kind of took a little bit of a step back or stagnated a little bit there last year, but we know that kind of ceiling and that potential is right there in his game.
And I know, you got something there?
Because I remember just stats out of nowhere. I know for a fact, Dobson, the final 10 games of the year, didn't score a goal. And there was a stretch during the year where he went 19 games. So the fact that he had that good of an offensive season, mimicking that year, like Ethan's saying, and what Dobson said is he's got more to give. Yeah, there's a 29 games or so where he didn't produce. And the fact that he could do that now and take those steps. That's huge.
Yeah, the wild thing is if he can find a little bit more consistency with that and get some more points in the power play, you might be looking at a 60, 65-point outing of him and maybe even a couple more votes in a Norris Trophy situation. I mean, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, but you know, they look at those numbers, and if he can get there, it might be a possibility. And guys, I know it's still early in camp, but has there been any emphasis on special teams yet? Have they been running any drills that way?
I don't think we've seen, Stefen, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we've seen any power play penalty kill work yet.
Fair enough. They're saving that for later.
Yeah, they don't want us to see that stuff, you know?
Right. They're going to kick you guys out of the room when they start working on that. Well, look, as long as it works out, that's all that matters. So two other big names coming into this training camp. It's going to be their first training camp with the New York Islanders. That's Bo Horvat and Pierre Engvall. Again, I know we're still a little early, but maybe you guys can just talk about them being there, maybe their overall attitude, their vibe coming into camp, and how they've looked on the ice so far.
Yeah, I mean, the sort of preferred line in the dressing room is, you know, them saying, well, we don't think this is the same team because Bo and Pierre are here, which is quite literally, it's not true, but it's
a good line though.
Yeah, it is. And in theory, having those guys for 75, 80 games, assuming they stay healthy, that's huge for this team. I mean, Bo Horvat is, we all talked about it when they traded for him, the sort of player who the Islanders kind of had needed to add for a long time. Right. And Pierre Engvall is someone who really, you know, has that kind of top six potential, can really impact games. And, you know, what we saw him do last year, late in the year with the Islanders, was really impressive, and I think opened a lot of eyes because he hadn't gotten that sort of a chance in Toronto. He had been blocked by a lot of their kind of high-end guys.
Yeah, I think that with Engvall coming in last year, the expectations on the island were low. I mean, I'm sure, you know, plenty of people maybe at least knew who he was, but he wasn't really a standout name, especially behind all the ones that were over there in Toronto. But Pierre Engvall probably has a real chance to shine and earn that long-term contract that he got, right?
Remember, I mean, again, Lou, when he acquired Engvall, and usually when he acquires players, he brings them back. But you looked at the reason he went and got Engvall is because Barzal and his speed were gone. And you go and get Engvall, and it just worked. For whatever reason, him, Nelson, and Palmieri just carried the offense after his arrival, like 6 games in, to him being on the island. And in the playoffs, that was the best line. And for Horvat, this, again, getting traded midseason with kids, it was tough for him. He talked about it last year, the mental toll it took. And people, you know, the hockey players are getting paid this much money. You can't forget about that stuff. And I think this summer, he got a house built, his family settled in.
Yep.
A lot of pressure off him. And I think that's obviously huge because I'm not saying he was playing with so much pressure, but I think having a full summer to relax, get comfortable, you know, hang with the guys, get to know him a little more, I think that'll be huge as well.
Yeah, no question. And even though they did play a good 20, 30 games or whatever it is last year after they came in, I think there really is something to be said to actually being there for training camp and going through the motions and learning the system a little bit more. Because let's face it, they had to learn it on the fly last season when they joined the team. Doesn't mean there's going to necessarily be a 15 goal or point output, you know, increase because they're at training camp, but at least they can.
For Horvat's case, they're hoping.
Well, yeah, you kind of need that, right? Yeah, for sure, with all the investment that they put into him. But I think that's what people are sleeping on outside of the island. You know, you have a lot of people that are picking the Islanders to be outside of the playoffs, and that's fine. We're used to that here on Long Island if you're not around here. But I think this team has a chance to kind of surprise again. You know, having these guys having a full training camp and going through the motions, and also Lane Lambert getting his second training camp with these guys. I want to talk about him now. Again, early in camp, but have you seen any more perhaps comfort with him, a little more confidence, or is he running things a little differently? How is Lane Lambert's approach look so far in training camp?
Yeah, I mean, I think we saw last year that he's a pretty animated guy when he runs practice. I think we've continued to see that. Honestly, the place where I've seen him be more comfortable is when he's talking to us. He seems to be a good amount more relaxed and a little bit more engaging, which it helps us do our jobs better, and we appreciate that.
Right.
But I mean, I think with any job in any situation, you know, your first year is going to be you're kind of learning things, you're learning people, you're learning the role, and even in Lane's case, where obviously he had kind of been the associate coach for a while, it's different when you are in that head role, and you know, you're kind of, you don't get to be everybody's friend all the time is kind of the cliche, right?
Right.
And I don't know if it happened last year. I'm just noticing it more. He called over Engvall today to talk with him for like 30, 40 seconds about a drill. He did it with Horvat the other day. So it's not just him going up to youngsters and trying to get them going. Like, it's the vets, and he's going. It seems like he's talking more Romanov too.
Okay.
So again, I think he learned a lot after last year. People want to blame him for what went wrong last year, but the guys in the room all credited Lane for getting him through that hard times in January and February and things like that. So I think for Lane, like this is a huge year for him, obviously, but I think just getting a year under your belt, just so much more comfortable. Again, on the ice and talking with us.
Yeah, very curious to see how Lambert settles in his second year. I think, on top of the players, I think there's also going to be a lot of focus on him and the job that he does throughout this year. But we're already 15 minutes in the show, so let's take a little break here. Folks, I want to thank you so much for tuning in here to Hockey Night New York, new season. Very excited to be back here at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
I don't want to hear it. It's over. I can't believe they fell short again.
Yeah, but they played so well. They made it to the semifinals 2 years in a row.
The semifinals aren't the cup. God damn it, I hate those Lightning.
They'll get another shot at it next year.
I don't even want to talk about it anymore, all right? They lost, okay? Let me just sit here and enjoy the one thing that makes me a little bit happy. This fresh, delicious, tasty, meaty, turkey-filled Blue Line combo. I eat 3 every day to help keep me strong.
Hey, Donnie, can I have one of those?
Coming right up. Talk about a blast from the Blue Line.
Blue Line Deli and Bagels. Our goal is to make you a hero.
Thanks for giving some time to our sponsors. Ready to talk more Isles? The train rolls on right here on Hockey Night in New York.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Hockey Night in New York here at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. I'm, of course, my co-host Stefen Rosner and Ethan Sears of the New York Post. We're going to pick it up here and talk a little bit more about training camp. So we were just talking about Lane Lambert. What about these line combinations? Again, I keep saying it, I keep prefacing here early. They're looking at pairings, they're looking at how guys match up, but maybe you guys can talk a little bit about the guys that he's put together so far.
Yeah, we mentioned earlier he's kind of had Arnaud Durando with Barzal and Horvat, and kind of the theme so far has been they've wanted to pair younger players with the kind of veterans. We've seen Isaiah George skating with Ryan Pulock, for example, and I think it kind of goes without saying that those are not going to be their opening night lines and pairs. Right. But I kind of like the organizational philosophy of it because we talk about young guys coming to training camp and getting that experience. Well, that doesn't quite mean much if you're just going to be skating with the same guys who you're skating with in Bridgeport. You're going to get more out of it if you're skating with NHL guys, letting them, get a chance to kind of take you under their wing and that kind of thing. And obviously there's going to be a point, and I would imagine that point will be soon, where they're going to have to start rolling out lines and pairs that look a little bit more, for lack of a better word, real. Right. But, I guess we're not quite there yet, which is fine. It's only been 3 days.
For sure. So, Stefen, it's a little hard to do because Kyle Palmieri has been out on maintenance, and I want to talk about that a little bit with you guys too. But I know you've been heavily emphasizing keeping that second line together of Engvall, Nelson, and Palmieri. Is that something you think is going to happen? And maybe you can just talk a little bit about why that's something they should focus on.
Yeah, I think the main reason you bring Engvall back, again, is for that line. Let's say you let Engvall go, right? And that line, Nelson and Palmieri, whoever they put on that wing, just does. I feel like you owed it to that line to bring Engvall back. And again, Engvall could play on the third line. He could play on that top line. I think Barzal hinted at it, that that could happen at the golf outing. I just think with whatever reason why it worked, it just did. And I think you're at a point now where the last couple of years, Nelson's really carried the offense. And now that you have Horvat and Barzal for a full year, he shouldn't have to. Like, again, he was a one-person line, essentially. And now that he has people on his side, like a healthy Palmieri, if he is healthy, and Engvall, it takes a lot of pressure off Nelson having to be that guy. And again, I just think it works. The speed, Engvall, he's not going to rack up 30 goals and 50 assists, whatever. It's just his ability to help transition. I think with that top line, having Horvat and Barzal for transitioning, Nelson's not a slow guy, but Engvall just makes that line so much more dangerous. And again, having Palmieri, who I think is their best long-distance shooter, and a guy that could also drive the net, those three players just all bring something different that makes that line. Again, if you're an opposing team, you got to choose now, which of your top pairing is going against which line. It's not as easy as putting the top one against Barzal and the second against Nelson because you'll get burned.
Yeah, and it's definitely something that I think fans should be keeping an eye on, just for the intrigue. It's just how that top 9 really kind of comes out. We've talked about a little bit already who's going to play with Pajot on his wings, but also I think a lot of this is going to come down to just the big question, like what to do with Anders Lee. And I think he's gonna have a big influence on how the rest of the line shake out because, I even see it on Twitter and between the fans and stuff like that. There's a lot of talk about where you put this guy. Does he have the foot speed to be on the top line with Matt Barzal and Bo Horvat? Can you put him on the third line with JG Pajot? Does he have the foot speed to, be more of a checking role? And, I'm gonna slightly, play devil's advocate against your second line here and say that I feel like you might have to slot Lee on the second line with Nelson and toy with maybe a guy like Palmieri or Engvall on the first line with Horvat and Barzal. I mean, we'll see how it all shakes out. But Ethan, what are your thoughts on Anders Lee and kind of where he sits in this lineup? He scored 28 goals last year. He's obviously in his 30s now. He maybe lost a step. That kind of revealed itself a little bit in the playoff series against Carolina. What have you seen from Lee so far, and where do you think he might end up?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because I think from watching him live, kind of like you said, there were times last year where you thought, maybe he's not quite the same guy in front of the net as he's been before. Maybe he has lost a little bit, and obviously he had that knee injury a couple years ago. And then you kind of look at the advanced stats, and I think, if you buy into that, his individual expected goals last year was a career high, which surprised me on a personal level.
Okay.
So I don't. That's all the big way of saying I don't quite know.
I have no idea,
but
that's all right.
But I would be curious if I were them to kind of try him in those different roles, see if something works. My inclination would be to keep that second line together because if it isn't broke, why would you try to fix it? But I don't think there's any harm in. Does Pierre Engvall's speed make sense with Barzal and Horvat, especially if you kind of decide that's not a place where you want Anders? That to me is kind of the X factor there in keeping that line together.
And I think one big question regarding Lee is where they play Wahlstrom. Again, Wahlstrom's coming into camp. He's saying it's the best he's ever felt. He looks completely healthy. He looks like he has the strong mental game as well, which you need from a guy like that. But we even saw today is on some line rushes, Barzal was on his off wing. And I bring that up because a guy like Wahlstrom, I hear a lot of people saying, just put him on that top line and have it Wahlstrom, Horvat, and Barzal. And to me, again, it took Wahlstrom pretty much until Lambert's first year to truly grasp how to play a 200-foot game alongside Pajot. And I think, again, coming off this is a major injury. The last thing I think they want to do is put him on his off wing and do that kind of stuff. So I think, again, if you're going to keep Wahlstrom on the third line, that definitely impacts where you play Lee because you have Fasching too and a healthy fourth line. But I think if they do say, hey, let's, maybe Lee should play in the third line, which I'm against, but because just of the defensive prowess of that line and you have to trust Lee's foot speed, then maybe they do think, hey, can Wahlstrom play with Barzal and Horvat and you move Barzal to his offing, or are they comfortable enough putting Wahlstrom on his offing? So I think a lot of it has to do with Wahlstrom and how comfortable he is early in the year because we saw with Lee when he came back. Remember, he scored in his first game back, but then it took a little bit for him. And I think with Wahlstrom, if you just throw him in the top 6, it might be a little too much mentally and physically on him when he's so comfortable alongside Pajot.
And to keep it on Wahlstrom, you mentioned this on Twitter, and I think you did a piece on him at the start of camp here. You mentioned something about him gaining a lot more confidence through the injury, which which stood out to me. I said, wow, he's been injured, he's been off the ice, he's been trying to, make his way back, and he emphasized the fact that he's feeling a lot more confident than he has in the past. So maybe you can just tell a little bit about where that's coming from. What has him so confident?
Yeah, so what he said was during his rehab process, he was able to focus on so many more aspects that if he was healthy in a full season, he couldn't do, like nutrition, building his muscle mass, just strengthening other areas of his game. I even asked him today, and I'll have a piece on it either tomorrow or Monday, is he said watching from above was so important for him. Because again, on ice level, you're seeing things, and watching from above is such a different aspect. You're seeing how things break out. And he said he learned a lot from that. He said, of course, the rehab was tough to watch and not play, but I think the confidence is that he feels amazing. He worked on areas of games he hasn't worked on before. And just overall confidence in his game, again, working on those areas, I think gave him more of an appreciation of, I'm 23, I'm fully healthy now. Now's my time. He said to us, his attitude this year is F it. Go out there. He said he's been preparing for the season for 9 months. Now it's just time for him to just go and play. And I think he said something to that Ethan, I don't know if you remember, last year was kind of, I don't know if it was an effort mindset, but he said he just wanted to go have fun. But I think now, losing a year of your career, pretty much a full year, or half a year, whatever it is, he's not taking anything for granted anymore. So I think this is, obviously it's a make or break for you because he's on a 1-year deal. But I think this is the time for Wallstrom to show it, and he's ready. Yeah,
and I mean, if I'm the Islanders, everything he said is exactly what I want to hear. I mean,
for sure.
He said, he said the thing about having that effort attitude, but I think the quote was, "This injury is the best thing that ever happened to me," or something like that.
Like a
which
blessing
is,
in disguise or something.
Which is, I mean, it's almost beyond blessing in disguise. I mean, that's like a drastic thing to say, right?
Right.
But I mean, he's someone who we all know that potential with the shot that he has, the physicality that he added to his game. So, if he's going out there with the right attitude and has the right mentality, and obviously kind of recovering from the injury is a big part of that as well. But he's on a 1-year deal. I mean, I think it kind of goes without saying that, like, most restricted free agents his age don't sign 1-year deals. That's a little bit of a, hey, go prove something. Like, the Islanders want to see him go prove something. He wants to go prove something. That's a great mindset to have.
And to add to that too is, again, being on the 1-year deal this is the year for Wallstrom to prove that he's not just an NHL player. We think we know that, but top 6 or bottom 6. Because if he proves he's not a top 6 player, they have so many bottom 6 guys that just play a bottom 6 role better. Right. And again, younger guys, whether it's a Dufour or Maggio, that again don't have that amazing top 6 potential that Wallstrom had. So I think for him, this is huge. And I think also having those young guys on the doorstep will push him more, because last year at camp, you knew it was Bells and Wallstrom making the team. There was young guys, sure, but there wasn't that much competitive. Now you have Gauthier here, Fasching here, even John. You have guys here that are NHL caliber guys. So Wallstrom can't just go in there, and he's not, thinking that he has a spot, because it's not a guarantee.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And Wallstrom definitely has the potential to be one of those X factors for the Islanders this year. You know what I mean? Like I mean, how long have we talked about just needing that sniper, needing that guy that can score, helping the power play, whatever it is, and this could finally be that year. And I know these words have come out of my mouth in this show before, like, oh, we're going into another year. This could be Wallstrom's year to be that guy, right? And hopefully it finally is. If he can stay healthy, and if he is feeling as confident as he says, and he goes in with a healthy mindset going into the season, and of course if Lambert gives him a chance, which it really sounds like he is, because I see the quotes that you guys are pulling out from, and it looks like he likes what he's seeing so far, right?
Yeah, and I think again with Wallstrom, just going back to it, is he has no choice. Like this really has to be it, because again, he could bounce around from team to team, but he loves it here. His teammates love him here, but again too, when you're in a cap world, and if he becomes that sniper. Again, he's not going to cost, let's say he has a great year, he's not going to cost $8, $9, $10 million. He's a homegrown sniper. Yes, the cap's going to go up, but it financially makes the Islanders' situation so much better if their sniper's here on a cheap deal.
Yeah, without a doubt. And maybe now we can just talk about the guys that are somewhat on the men. Ethan, what's the? I know the Islanders don't give much, but Kyle Palmieri, he's had some maintenance days. Pajot has been sick apparently. What's the latest on those guys?
Yeah, so Pajot was back today.
Okay.
As far as I'm concerned, he's fine.
Okay.
Palmieri, we haven't seen. We haven't been told upper or lower body. We know that something happened in a kind of pre-training camp, like a captain skate type of thing.
Okay.
They're still calling it maintenance, still calling him day-to-day.
Yeah.
But when we asked, well, is he going to be on the ice before, is he going to be on the ice with the group? Because he has been skating on his own. I think that's important to say. But, is he going to be on the ice with the group before the Ranger game on Tuesday? We were told, let's wait and see. So,
okay.
I don't know.
We have no idea. That's fine.
And we're not doctors, but again, last year was head injuries for Palmieri.
Right.
The fact that he is, again, not a doctor, but the fact that he is skating, I would think if he had a head injury, he would not be skating. So I think that's a positive there.
Sure.
But again, we have no idea.
I think that's fair to say. So a little bit of a veteran leadership void being left behind this training camp when you see names like Josh Bailey, who first time, long time, not here, right? Josh Bailey's not there. Zach Parise, at least for now, isn't there. Have you guys noticed anybody else maybe kind of stepping up a bit to fill those leadership roles?
I think with a couple of groups, it's tough to pinpoint. Obviously, Lee's leading his group. Cizikas was leading his group. I think that's something to note. But last year when Clutterbuck was hurt and Bailey was out of the lineup, Nelson wore the A.
Right.
So my assumption is that Nelson's going to get a letter. I think he's certainly deserved it through his play. Again, it's hard when we're not in the room to know which guys truly are those vocal leaders. I remember talking last year, and like Zach Parise, as much as we see that he's a leader on the ice, and he is in the room, he's a quiet leader, they said, in the room. He doesn't have to say much. And there's other guys that are probably more vocal. So I think for me, it's Brock, just because we saw him wear the A last year when leaders went down.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I agree. If you asked me to pick who it would probably be Brock, and probably for the same reason.
It's still strange to me to see gray in Brock Nelson's hair.
And he's in his prime. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, I know. He keeps getting better by year. He literally ages like a fine wine. But no, it's good to see guys like him stepping up. And Stefen, I saw you mention on Twitter that Matt Barzell's had a couple of equipment changes, and obviously, most importantly, which devastated Islander fandom across the board, is the lack of locks here and the haircut. What do you have to say about that?
Well, one, he got a haircut. So
he did.
He got a haircut. But yeah, I noticed yesterday he was wearing Warrior stuff, and I remember correctly, wore CCM last year and stuff. And he just said he's just testing out some new stuff, maybe some new sponsorships. I don't know.
Okay.
Obviously, it's all feel for these guys, and
sure.
I think maybe Warrior came out with a new set of gloves and stick that he wanted to try. I don't know. I'm a goalie, so I don't really ever use that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, why not try things, right? That's the whole point of camp.
That is the whole point of camp. And I guess the last thing on camp, and obviously if you guys have anything else, bring it up, but what's just the overall atmosphere and vibe from the players? I mean, are they enthusiastic, they optimistic, serious, down to business? I mean, just what's been the vibe from the players so far?
I mean, I think beginning of camp, everybody's in a good mood. Nobody's lost a game yet, right?
Right.
Everyone's kind of excited to be back. You're not kind of at that point where it's like day 10 out of 12 going to the rink and you're tired and you just want to like be on the couch and do nothing. Like, everyone's in a good mood. Like,
sure.
Players are in a good mood. Coaches are in a good mood. Staff is in a good mood. Us, media's in a good mood. Like,
that's good.
You haven't beaten any stories to death yet. Like, it's good. The vibes are really good the first few days of camp.
Yeah, I think talking to the players again, obviously you come back to camp and the pace is good. They'll say that all day, but I think the mindset is they came back to work and they're being worked hard. It wasn't like the first day where everyone they've been working hard. The skating has been, I'm getting tired watching them skate. Like, the last 15 or so, 20 minutes of each session is back and forth and then laps. And then, so they're really working and they're exhausted in the room. So
That's
I think,
good.
again, no one's cutting. You can't really cut corners in camp, but you could tell, like, hey, it's 0 to 100 real quick.
And last thing I wanted to note about this, Stefen, you and I talked about this, last season with how Lambert kind of pivoted from trying to open up the offense a little more. They struggled with that. They almost found their way on the outside looking in with the playoffs until they kind of shifted gears, went back to a little Barry Trotz hockey, to a defensive style of hockey. Have you guys seen where that's going yet as far as what they're doing on the ice with training camp so far?
Yeah, I think again, I'm noticing it more now than last year. Is a lot of the focus last couple of days has been the transition, which obviously the Islanders need to work on, but I think more of an emphasis on the forwards getting open for the D. I think that was a huge issue last year. I asked a couple of players about that. They said it hasn't been changed that much, but you can notice during their drills that they are focusing heavy on getting that forward to tell them that they're open. And guys hitting that, obviously, because that was a huge issue last year, was breaking out of their own zone.
Ethan, anything on your end?
Yeah, 100%. Kind of like you said, that has been a constant issue for them since I've been covering this team.
Right.
That's something where I think if you have Dobson playing more minutes, kind of like we talked about earlier, in theory that should be of help. We haven't quite seen tons and tons of strict defensive zone, offensive zone work yet. So it's maybe a little hard to say as to exactly where that emphasis is going to be, but I think that's a great point, Stefen, on kind of how they're working on transition.
Good stuff. All right, so I think we covered everything we needed to cover in camp. Good stuff so far, guys. Why don't we go into what's on tap?
And now, it's time for What's on Tap, a look ahead at the Islanders' upcoming schedule.
All right, folks, it's time for What's on Tap. And guys, we have hockey games coming up this week. They may not count, but it's going to be fun to see the boys back in blue and orange playing some hockey. And they got some division rivalries coming up. Tuesday at the Garden to play the Rangers. Wednesday, they go back home to play Philly. And then Friday, they play the Rangers at UBS Arena. What do you guys think we're going to see in these preseason games? Are we going to see a lot of kids getting into these games, different line combinations? What are we expecting for these games?
I think to start off is guys last year that didn't get into preseason games, like Maggio and George, if he stays up here. I think that's a huge thing for them, especially George, who we have not seen play. Again, he got hurt in rookie camp last year. This is a huge opportunity. Again, obviously 98% chance he's going back to the OHL. But this is experience. I talked to him the other day. This is experience at camp that he's going to take back with him to juniors and how to prepare every day and what he's seeing from veterans. So I think, one, just opening up his mind to what an NHL speed's like in an actual game. Maggio, same thing. But again, in terms of lines, we won't know. I think whatever game Horvat and Barzal playing, I think you will see Durando with them for at least a period or two. I'm assuming Lane's going to switch the lines up.
Sure.
Yeah, I guess to piggyback off that, I'll be paying close attention to kind of what the lines are and the pairs in the preseason. I think that'll be kind of the first real indication we get of, are any of these sort of early camp experiments going to become a little more than that?
Sure.
What do we kind of think that the first crack that the coaching staff has at rolling out in an actual game, and here's what we want the lines to be, is an interesting, it kind of gives you a base to work from. And I think the first two games, especially because we know that they're going to kind of start to pare down the camp size after the second game.
Just going to ask that. Yeah.
So that'll be, you'll probably see maybe some of the lower end guys kind of fighting for their lives a little bit. I don't know how many of those guys are necessarily in contention to make the roster, but that'll be an interesting element. And then with George specifically, I think we don't know exactly when he's going to go back to London, and I would imagine that might depend on how he looks in his first game or two.
Yeah, according to what I'm seeing from you guys on Twitter, it seems like George is really opening some eyes here in camp, huh?
I mean, you talk to everyone about him. Lambert keeps, you see the quotes. He loves him, but I spoke to Pulak, and what Pulak said is he's just so poised. And for such a young,
Sears,
19, he's playing in juniors against younger people, obviously, but he's not, when we see young guys stand out, it's usually for the wrong reasons, right? In these type of things, in preseason, whatever it is. Like, he's standing out for the right reasons, and when he's not standing out, it's not for the, he's going to make mistakes, but he looks poised, wise beyond his years. The biggest thing Lambert said was tape-to-tape passing. And the vision, he could see the ice, and again, he's so mobile. I don't really know how you can compare him. Maybe speed and the mobile ability like a Letty, but in terms of shutdown ability, and again, I don't want to jump the gun here, but I mean, he's going against some top guys and he's shutting them down. And I think for a young guy at 19 to be able to do that when he's not a huge guy, he's tall, but he's not big. He's still 19. To be able to do that now at this point, that's got to be huge for just his confidence and the organization's confidence in him.
Yeah, no doubt about it, and it's very encouraging to hear, another potential late round draft pick that's maybe might be something for this team.
That draft in a whole, you got Maggio, George traded and got Romanov during that draft, Odelius, and I mean, in a couple of years, you could look back at that draft and say you got four really good players late.
You almost have to say the Islanders better hope so, because I mean, we've talked about so much how there's just a very empty cupboard when it comes to what's in the prospect line. At least definitely no more really high end not first round, second round guys. So you got to hope that these guys pan out. Otherwise, when everybody else starts getting up in age on this team, you might be a little worried about where this team is going with the lack of prospects. But so that's what's on tap. We got some games coming up here. Rangers twice, Philadelphia Flyers inching closer and closer to the regular season, so that's great stuff. I think we're going to take one more break, but before we do, want to talk about our friends at Main Street Board Game Cafe in Huntington Village on Long Island's North Shore. Games for sale and for open play, food and drink, beer and wine, fun and friends. Bring the magic of phones down, eyes up, tabletop board games to your family. Our staff will help you find the right game, from old favorites to the hottest new releases. We have everything from strategic to easy party games. Get off your screens for a night your family will remember. Looking for meetups to join? Our Magic the Gathering, Dungeons & Dragons, Lorcana, and organized play communities are welcoming for all. We also do party and corporate events located at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village. Go to mainstboardgamecafe.com for more information. Main Street Board Game Cafe. Find your crowd. Unplug your game. So with that, we'll go to one more break, and when we come back, it'll be time for the Hero of the Week. We'll be right back.
New York Islanders fans, Sunday night is hockey night in New York. Whether you were raised at the barn in Uniondale or born in the stable at Belmont, tune in to Hockey Night in New York. Catch us live from Floored Media in Rockville Center, Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, as we cover all things Islanders at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. All episodes are also available on YouTube and all your favorite podcast providers. And for all you social butterflies, you can follow at Hockey Night NY on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for all the latest updates. Hockey Night in New York, the best night of the week for any Islanders fan. Did you have a nice break? Well, it's time to get back on the couch for more Islanders therapy on Hockey Night in New York.
Welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. When you hear this song, that means it is time for Hero of the Week, brought to you by the great Blue Line Deli and Bagels. So let's get into it, ladies and gentlemen. Let's talk about the Heroes of the Week. The games haven't started yet, but Stefan, I believe you have a little hero for us.
I do, and it's William Dufour. I think in terms of prospect development, the thing the Islanders needed to see was his skating ability get better. And again, he's working on that year after year, but I think the biggest thing was his initial strides. He's fast. I mean, he's 6'5". He's fast when he gets there. The problem was getting there. And I think you're seeing now in camp, he's getting there very quickly. He's leading the drills in terms of the suicide skates. He's at the front. And the biggest thing, too, is he's not getting tired. You know, he worked really hard on his nutrition and working on that in the offseason. I think that was the next step for Dufour. We saw him play in one NHL game against the Bruins. Kind of unfair to put him in that situation against a juggernaut team. But he looked a little lost. Again, first game, but also you could tell, you know, he wasn't ready. He comes into camp. He told me that this is the first summer he's really had. You know, last couple of years, he's played juniors and the world stuff and things like that. Now he had the entire summer. Again, Bridgeport didn't make the playoffs to truly work, get in the gym, get on the ice, and really improve that area of his game. And he's done that. And I think that's huge because this was a player where you thought, you know, he's got an NHL caliber shot, but, you know, if you can't skate, you can't play in this league. He's put himself more in the conversation like, wow, this guy could actually really pan out, maybe more than just a bottom six guy because he can skate now and keep up with people. It's huge.
That's another promising thing to hear. Just like we talked about, you need these young guys to pan out with the way their prospect pool is right now. Ethan, do you have a hero of the week?
Sure. I will go with I'll go with Isaiah George. Kind of like we touched on. To me, he was really the standout guy of rookie camp. I was really impressed just watching him and in some of these 2-on-1 drills, the poise he had in that setting. I'm almost kind of looking for, is anybody kind of a cut above the rest of these guys? And for me, I wasn't really expecting him to be in that conversation coming in. We hadn't seen much of him. He got hurt during rookie camp last year, and I think we only saw a day and a half of him on the ice. And he was in there. I don't want to jump the gun. I don't think that he, you know, is going to be on the Islanders this year. And honestly, I think it's too bad that he kind of has to go to the OHL, right? Because if not, I think he's in that place where Bridgeport would be really valuable for him. But I mean, he's on my radar in a way that he probably wasn't a week and a half ago. So Isaiah George.
These are very encouraging things to hear, but we won't know until they really get into the games, right? But it's definitely encouraging to hear. Now, I haven't been at training camp, so I haven't seen what the hell has been going on. But I do have a hero of the week, and that is none other than Anders Lee. 4th year now doing the Jam Cancer, and just hats off to him. You know, captain this team and organizing the Cancer Jam to raise money for people affected and diagnosed with cancer. So just a hat tip to him for just getting involved in the community, helping people on the island. He's really embraced his role as the captain for this team. So Anders Lee, we salute you. He is my hero of the week. So with that, I think we can, Ed, how you doing, Ed? How was your summer?
Time for Questions Bruins.
The new Questions Bruins coming on.
Ask us a question.
Let it play out. Oh, yeah.
You're very fast with that trigger button, buddy.
Yeah, you know. I'm excited.
I know you are. So you have a nice summer, pal?
Yeah.
You ready for a new season?
Yeah, but you know, it's wet and cold here on the island, so it feels like hockey season.
A little bit.
It does. Yeah. You know, when we have Muppets Henson in the chat from Toronto saying, it's sunny there. So
good
shout out to our Canadian fans.
You want a cookie?
It must be nice.
Yeah, it must be nice. It is no longer summer for us here.
Well, the most important question, though, Ed, is how's your best friend Jay doing there next to you?
My best friend Jay has This grown man has been flipping me off for the past very start of the show, and I totally haven't retaliated. And
Well, that's
flipped him off every
I'm glad
time
you were able to control yourself.
He flips me off. No, I have.
That's nice. That's nice. And Jake is keeping you company
I'm
back there.
stupid,
Jake's
Yes,
new
Jake
pal of the show. Jake the Snake Rodonis
Jake
over
the
there.
Snake Rodonis is the man with the cam over
Yes,
there.
he is.
Yes, so they say.
All right. Well,
taking all the
how has the chat been? Have the questions been rolling in?
The questions have been brewing
Love it
for a while. I think we start off tonight with Troutier 19 here.
Let's do it.
Seems a little disgruntled.
Surprise, surprise.
Tell me how the same roster as the last season, especially in the playoffs, will produce any different results. Not seeing it and not too excited for the season. With Parise gone, it could be much worse.
Who wants to take that?
I can't answer this question anymore.
Ethan, what? Yeah, let's get some fresh thoughts on this, Ethan.
Yeah, I guess the case that this will be different probably comes down to it's going to be a full season of Bo Horvat. It's going to be a full season of Pierre Engvall, and Matt Barzal is healthy. And those are three pretty key pieces. Now, do I expect the Islanders to go and be a top 2 seed in the East and like win 55 games and seriously challenge for the Stanley Cup? But honestly, probably not. But
okay,
I think there's probably enough here that they should be in a similar spot to last year, where they should be right in the playoff hunt. They should be a pretty tough out if they can get in, and from there, who knows?
Yeah, the conversations that I've been having with people about this team coming into the season is there are a lot of ifs, and it just depends to me on how many of those ifs work out in their favor. Can Romanov have a full season of what we saw towards the latter half of last season? Can Noah Dobson figure it out defensively and perhaps add to his point production on the power play like we talked before? Can Bo Horvat be that 30 to 40 goal scorer that he was in Vancouver before he came over? Can Pierre Engvall step up here and become more than just a middle to bottom 6 player? There's a lot of questions. Can Sebastian Aho build off of his year last year? Again, a lot of ifs here. Are they all possible? Sure. Are they all going to pan out? We don't know. Is Adam Pelech going to stay healthy? If all these things, or at least most of them, fall into place, I think we see a team that can not only replicate what they did last season, but improve upon it if things fall the right way. Oliver Wahlstrom brought him up before. If he can be a guy who can score 20 to 30 goals in a season, I mean, it could change the game for this entire team. And I think, that's part of being a fan, right, Troutier? And right, you guys, like it's the optimism. The potential is there. It's just a matter of them putting these things into place. The puzzle pieces falling into the right spots. Falling into the right spots, and then they can have some success. And there's plenty of reasons to look at the negative side of those questions and say you're not going to get all that stuff, and things aren't going to go their way. But look, there hasn't been a puck drop yet in a game yet. This team can be successful. We'll see what happens.
Next up from Joey Pickles, do you think performance of the rookie class in camp being strong might open up more possible deals before the season starts? Due to our cap situation, any deals to increase talent may cause us to lose these potential bright stars, such as George, Maggio, Dufour. Do they try to package Salo since he seems to be the 8th D-man now?
I don't think we see a trade happen before the year, but that being said, if some of these young guys do really well in Bridgeport and they get called up and outplay some of these vets, looking at the deadline, whether the Islanders are in the picture or not, could we see a guy like a Wahlstrom who's on a 1-year deal get moved? If those guys, if the Islanders feel like guys below Wahlstrom are ready to make more of an impact and Wahlstrom doesn't take those steps, I mean, you'd rather not let him walk, right?
Yeah.
Things like that. But I don't think we see a trade happen before the season. But these young guys certainly can put a lot of pressure on these vets.
Yeah, I agree. Before the season, I think is probably unlikely, but the Islanders, if they're in a position to add, don't have tons and tons of draft capital to add
or
with.
cap space.
They don't have tons of cap space
Right.
to add with.
Right.
So I think the first place that you would look would probably be that group of players, or like you said, someone like a Wahlstrom who is on a 1-year deal and could get supplanted depending how things go.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I think the staff, Lou on down through the coaching staff are going to see where the chips fall with these guys, and if there's a deal to be made at all, you're not going to see it until maybe 30 games into the season. But
And you won't know about it.
well, yeah, clearly, you seem a little bitter about that.
Oh, no.
All right,
We're good.
fair enough. Ed, what do we got?
Next up from Tom Boyle. Tom has a few,
Boyle.
and since it's his 6th-month sub anniversary, I think we should congratulate Tom and
way to go,
him for
Tom. We appreciate the
continued
support.
And we'll read a few of your questions, Tom, but we'll start off with this one. Where do you see Durando in his development?
I think we saw him last year for 4 games, and I think the biggest thing we saw from Durando with a lot of the prospects they called up was their defensive play. His active stick. I mean, he had the most active stick I've seen in a while from a young kid. He just, when he got the chance to score, I think I did a story the other day, he had 9 shots on goal, couldn't score. Now in camp, not only is he bringing that speed and shiftiness and that stick, he's burying all the chances that are being set up by Horvat and Barzal, and that's that next step. He told me the other day, he goes, I'm not 18 anymore. I know that this is really when I have to do it. I think he's 24, turning 25. So he's got to make it now or, risk seeing these other young guys pass him on the totem pole. So I think for Durando, he's done everything right to get a chance. And the biggest thing now will be in the preseason games when he gets a chance to score on a backdoor play or whatever the case may be with these 2 guys. If he gets that chance, he's got to bury because there's other young guys that are probably going to do a better job of burying. And again, he's not young anymore.
Yeah. To me, the biggest thing with him is just it's really hard to get an opportunity when the Islanders have this many guys who can slot right into that bottom 6. He really needs to make himself stand out, really needs to, like you said, bury those chances in camp in the preseason because just kind of by virtue of where he's been compared to, say, Julien Gauthier, has been on NHL rosters for the past few years, you sort of almost start him with a disadvantage in your head in camp. And it's sort of on him to prove that. Now, I think he's done a good job so far. I was impressed by him when he got called up last year. I think he's totally capable of playing that role. But you have to see it in the preseason. You have to see it all throughout camp, and you need to see him if he does check those boxes. You need to see him continue to do it in the regular season because we know how easy it is to lose those chances once you get them.
I agree with everything both of you had to say.
That's
Ed, what's the next question?
The next one from Tom Boyle is he asks, if injury occurs, which goalie is closest to be recalled?
It's Skarek by default because Lennox is coming from his last year in juniors. He's going to come in, whether he's the second guy in Bridgeport or he starts in the ECHL. Tykinen played his first time in North America last year in the ECHL. Appleby's a vet. He could certainly do it, but Skarek's been there, and he's ready with Corey gone to be that number 1. And he was also emergency recalled in the playoffs because they carry 3 goalies. He was up there getting to work with the goalie coaches, so I think just by default it would be Skarek. So yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Agreed.
Excellent.
And I would also, I think unless there was a pretty long-term injury, they have in the past gone to pretty big lengths to make sure that the number 3 goalie does not really play.
That's
Corey
fair.
Schneider Schneider got the 1 game.
Right.
That was after they were already out of playoff contention.
Right.
Last year when Corey was around, he didn't play. They gave I think they gave Sorokin a back-to-back or 2.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Ed, what do you got?
That's seemingly it for questions.
Is that right?
That is right, unless I'm a little hesitant to read this one from Trout19. It has nothing to do with hockey.
Oh, boy.
But the question is, do I have Chinese food or Italian food for dinner?
Chinese.
I'm going to go Italian.
I went Italian.
Yeah, Italian food is my number 1, man. No question about it. Ethan, where do you fall on that scale?
If you're going out, Italian. If you're ordering in Chinese.
He's ordering in. I think he's ordering in.
That's a good one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm Italian across the board here. In or out. I'm going with Italian.
We got Enzab with the last minute
with an
entry.
Islander question.
Thank God.
What are your expectations for the season? Playoffs or a high draft pick?
I'm going to go with Ethan here. What do you got?
To me, this team should be in the playoffs. I think if they're not, you need to probably evaluate a lot of things.
I think that's a fair answer. Stefan, you have anything to
I
add
think
there?
they finish in a wild card spot.
Yeah.
I just think if we talk about the ifs, right? If 60 to 70% of the ifs work out for them, it's not going to take 82 games to find out if they're it or not. I think they could lock up a wild card spot maybe a couple of weeks early. So I think, again, this is a team that should be in the playoffs.
Well, I have a question for you guys. Based on what you've seen so far, and there's plenty to come here, but who is your first call-up on offense and who is your first call-up on defense?
Me first?
Sure.
I think the way camp's gone, Durando's your first call up.
Okay.
I just think, again, they're trusting him early on to be with Horvat and Barzal, and he's played quite well. And then in terms of defense, I think you might have to look at, I'm going to say Grant Hutton for the sole reason that he probably would have been recalled last year if he had a long-term injury last year. This is a guy we saw play during the COVID. I mean, he played, I think, that first week when UBS opened, right? Or that first week because of the injuries. And I think he's very stable back there. He's not going to stand out for anything, but he's just a veteran type of guy. And I think if not him, then maybe you see Salo get that chance. I'm not sure, but I think Hutton would, for me, I think just in terms of bringing someone up for a stable 1 or 2 games, Hutton probably has the best chance.
Any thoughts there, Ethan?
I think I would probably go with Salo over Hutton.
Okay.
It's close. You can go either way.
Sure.
And
might depend on who gets hurt
Yes,
or whatever.
yeah.
Salo could play both sides also, which is an advantage.
Yeah. And I probably agree on Durando.
Okay.
I think DeFore is close, but because Durando looked better in his sort of call-up last year, I would probably go with him. Maybe depends a little bit on exactly who gets injured or exactly what role you want to fill, but yeah, I think I would say Durando by a hair.
And obviously it's going to be who's. I mean, if Maggio is playing better than those two guys in Bridgeport, you got to give those guys a chance that are there.
Yeah, we still got a lot to see what develops as far as, what these guys do in Bridgeport and whatnot. So for sure, but it's nice to get an early indication on what may or may not happen. And Ed, are we still clear on the questions here?
I think we're clear. Everyone's just chatting amongst themselves at this point.
That's great. I hope everybody's having a good time. Well, then with that, I think we can wrap this thing up. So why don't you hit that outro music, buddy?
That's it, buddy.
Let's go. So, folks, want to thank you all for hanging out here with our season warm-up show here at Floored Media in Rockville Center. Really excited to get this season going here. Thanks for tuning in at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. I want to send a huge thanks to our pal here, Ethan Sears from the New York Post, for joining us, coming down to the studio. Thanks a lot, bud.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Sean.
Absolutely, no question about it. And, of course, a big thanks to our sponsors, starting with Blue Line Deli and Bagels, located at 719 West Jericho Turnpike in Huntington, and 217 Carlton Avenue in East Islip. Remember, go to BlueLineDeli.com to check out the menu and order ahead. And a huge thanks to Main Street Board Game Cafe, located at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village. Find out how to unplug your game at mainstboardgamecafe.com. And also another big thanks to Floored Media here in Rockville Center. Love being here. Wonderful studio. Really looking forward to another season here at Floored. So big thanks to Jay and everything going on here at Floored Media. And folks, want to remind you guys all to please rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends, spread the word, and follow us on all the socials, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, X, whatever the hell you want to call that thing. But yes, please tune in and subscribe. It's going to be a really fun year. Got a lot of good guests coming up here, and we're going to be firing up October at Blue Line Deli next Sunday. Stay tuned for a time. Stay tuned for guests. That's going to be a good show there, too. Going to be a lot of fun. So, folks, for Stefan Rosner, for Ethan Sears, for Ed, Jay, and my boy Jake, thank you so much for tuning in. We've been Hockey Night in New York. We will see you next time.